So I saw this segment on Meet the Press or Face the Nation, one of those Sunday shows, right? And it was just the dumbest thing. See, when I was growing up, Face the Nation was this very staid and sober show, or Meet the Press. There were several of them with different names, but it was all basically the same thing. In the United States, on Sunday mornings, they'd have this interview. And it would be the most boring interview imaginable. It would just be this very boring set, and there'd be this journalist, and there'd be this government official, or this famous political figure of some sort or another, and they would talk about issues. And of course, to a child like me at that time, it was incredibly boring. To me now as an adult, it's fascinating. It's why Joe Rogan is so popular, right? It's adult conversation. Anyway, this Meet the Press of now, of today, oh no, it's all graphics and all kinds of swooping cameras and stuff like that. I mean, it looks like some kind of movie, for crying out loud, right? And they were doing this episode, or they were highlighting this episode. I mean, I caught this on Twitter, just like a promo of it. And basically the idea was that they were going to be game playing a war between the United States and China. There was Team Blue, that is the people playing the American side, and Team Red, evil, the people playing the Chinese side. And so what was going on was that, they were like sitting in two separate rooms and they were having like a war game, right? And that was the whole point of the show. Now, of course, why are they doing this? I mean, this is something that would never have happened, 20, 30, 40 years ago when I was watching this fucking show. Well, they're doing it now because they want to normalize war with China. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. See, they want to normalize war. Now, the question is, why are they pivoting to China? Because they are. The mainstream media in the United States, which is no different than a propaganda arm, I mean, this is like Soviet-style, late Brezhnev-era propaganda that's coming out of the mainstream media, right? The mainstream media, which is the propaganda arm of the United States government, which in turn is controlled by corporate interests and oligarchs in the United States, well, they're all pivoting towards China. They're pivoting away from Russia because the whole situation with Ukraine and Russia and this whole, kerfuffle did not go according to plan. No, it went radically wrong, man. Yeah, it went radically wrong. Why did it go so radically wrong? Well, because the Pentagon has discovered something that they really, really don't want to have to deal with in the future. And that is that the Russians are exceptionally good at war. They are. I've been, saying in videos and stuff that, the Russians call it a special military operation here, what they're doing here in Ukraine, and I just call it a war or invasion, right? But the fact is, using their terminology, the Russians' terminology, they're absolutely correct. What they're doing here in Ukraine, where I'm here in Kharkov, well, it is a special military operation in the sense that, see, it is not a war. They are not out to destroy and conquer the Ukraine. They're not into, leveling the whole place like they did with Nazi Germany back in the day. No. Their goal here now is to take it in more or less one piece, destroy as little as possible. And they have their objectives of demilitarizing the country and denazifying the country. And there are Nazis. Don't give me that there aren't. I'm here. I know that there are Nazis in Ukraine, all over the government of Ukraine, and that's why it's goddamn terrifying, but that's for another video. Anyway, the point. See, the Russians are conducting a special military operation. They haven't taken off the gloves. They haven't really gone to war. And sometimes they kind of like, show a little hint of it, sometimes they'll like decide, these Western weapons that are coming in, we don't really like that. And all of a sudden there'll be like, a barrage of these hypersonic missiles that blow everything sky high. And, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Western weapons, gone. Gone with the wind. Gone with the wind and smoke and fire of these hypersonic missiles. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's what's going on. The Russians are occasionally taking off the gloves when they have to deal with Western opponents, with like Western arms shipments, right? When they're dealing with the Ukrainians, it's kind of measured. But when they're dealing with the West, they kind of like, quickly strip off the glove and just whack them and then put the glove back on. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's how the Russians are approaching it. And the Pentagon is realizing, or has realized, we can't fight these guys. We can't. The Russians will hurt us badly, and it'll be humiliating. And here's the other thing, of course, that Russia, obviously, is a land power. And the United States is a naval power. The United States has 11 battle carrier groups, that is an aircraft carrier with complement of, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 planes, right? And a guided missile cruiser for air defense, and a whole bunch of other ships and stuff like that. He's got 11 of them, okay? The United States is a naval power. It always has been. It's not a land power. But the Russians are. And famously in The Princess Bride, when the character says that, one of the greatest mistakes ever made is getting into a land war with Russia. Exactly. You don't get into a land war with Russia because you're going to get fried, because they know what they're doing. They're good at war. They don't necessarily like war, but they're good at it. And they'll eat you for breakfast, okay? And so the Pentagon has realized this. And so the Pentagon is, and the whole military-industrial complex of the United States, is turning its attention to China. And the reason is very simple, because you see, China depends on shipping. Something like 55% of global trade goes through the South China Sea, on the one hand. It's quite a bit. On the other hand, domestically, again, something like 50% of China's domestic trade, what goes on inside China, goes through ships on the coast, which makes complete sense because you have all these cities on the coast or nearby the coast. And so it makes sense to be transporting goods, on the ocean rather than over land, even though the Chinese have developed high-speed railways and highways and all the rest of it, but still, it's just faster, easier, cheaper. And so if that sea trade is interrupted by a threat from the American Navy, it's really going to hurt the Chinese. And furthermore, the Chinese, historically, they are not known for being great at war. And, I'm not casting aspersions on the Chinese at all, but they are known as a nation of great thinkers, great merchants, not really great warriors. You look at Chinese history, and it really is a history of one invasion after the next, okay? And what the Chinese are very good at is being invaded and sort of like assimilating the invader. It's a very weird kind of passive-aggressive kind of thing. Look up the Yuan dynasty, and you'll understand what I'm saying. The Mongols invaded China and captured it, and somehow the Chinese kind of like got their tentacles on the Mongols and turned them into Chinese people. It was weird, but that's what basically happened. Anyway, that's not important. I'm not here to give you a Chinese history lesson, but what I am here to tell you is that the Americans think that they can take the Chinese. That's the bottom line issue. They think that they can take them. And the fact that the war, the proxy war that's going on with Russia is not working out the way they thought it was. They are basically laying the groundwork right now to pivot towards China, towards a war with China. You see, the Biden administration, the Democrats who are in power right now, they need a war. They need a war badly. They need a war like an incel needs a girl. You know what I'm saying? They need a war because if they don't have a war, November comes, they're going to get BTFO'd in the election. Even with all the rampant corruption and all the ballot box stuffing that's going to go on, that has happened and has been proven, even with all that, they're still going to get BTFO'd on election day in November of 2022. And so they need a war to distract. They need a war to shore up their position. They need a war badly. And the Russia situation is not working out. And the smart people at the Pentagon are telling everybody who will listen, that the Russians can't be beat. And they can't. Not in this situation. Because it plays to all of the Russian strengths, none of their weaknesses, and it plays against all of America's weaknesses. See? And so it's not a smart move. But China, that's different. China, oh yeah. And so that's why they are pivoting. And it's happening with remarkable speed. Pay attention. Pay attention to the mass media. Pay attention to the propaganda arms of the American government and how everything is turning towards China. China, China, China. And slowly the whole Ukraine thing is sort of like losing steam and getting put into the back burner. I mean, this happens naturally because the war is going on and the Russians are doing something that I hope that they'd be doing in order to not expand this war, which is to keep the war boring. Because what they're doing is just a slow grind every day. And because of that, the Americans are losing interest. And it's diminishing their desire to be a part of this war. And since there are no spectacular breakthroughs and no spectacular drama, the Americans are losing interest. And like I said, The Americans are realizing that they couldn't beat the Russians, but they think that they can beat the Chinese. So they're pivoting in that direction, and we're seeing it with the propaganda arms. And I'm betting that very, very soon we're going to start to see sanctions on the Chinese. They already have some sanctions. They're already on the sanctions escalator, as my friend Alexander Mercouris calls it. But that sanctions escalator is going to get ramped up. And a lot more sanctions are going to be hit on China for all kinds of stupid reasons. And it's going to be personal, hitting specific people, just punitive, really. And, as this happens, the Chinese are going to realize, okay, it's coming. Because they already kind of know, and they're already preparing. And they've paid very close attention to what happened to the Russians insofar as the sanctions there, and how the West, the American government and the European governments, stole Russia's foreign currency reserves. They stole it, $285 billion or however much it was. They stole that money. That was theft, the biggest theft in world history. I'm not kidding. And so the Chinese, they have a lot more to worry about because they have a lot more foreign currency reserves. And so they're trying to figure out, okay, we're going to lose this stuff in sanctions. So how do we get over this? Or how do we bring it back as quickly as possible, but without causing a panic? How? Right? They're trying to deal with this problem right now. That's what the Bank of China is thinking about nonstop, day and night right now. How to get that money back to China before the sanctions hit, because the sanctions are coming, because the Americans need it. And there's something else too, and this is pernicious. See, there is a segment of the economics brains, if you will, of the class of economists who have actual power and influence over policy. And this group is headed principally by Paul Krugman. And this group believes that a war, an all-out, full-out World War III kind of war, would be beneficial to the American economy, just like the Second World War was to the American economy. And these people are pushing war for no other reason than to improve the American economy. I mean, if that's not evil, I don't know what is. The notion of going to war deliberately so as to improve your economy, to get a little richer, I mean, that's evil as far as I'm concerned, but that's the way these people are. Mm-hmm. Paul Krugman and a certain cabal within the Federal Reserve, they're pushing for war because they think it'll fix all of America's problems. I'm not kidding. And that's the reality of it. And so this war with China, I mean, the Americans are going to go to war with somebody soon. And they had like a little test drive with the Russians and it didn't go their way. And so now they're going to turn to the Chinese. And they're going to do the exact same thing that they did with the Russians. They're going to use a proxy at first. And the proxy is probably going to be Australia. And the Australia bros are probably going to go to war over the Solomon Islands issue, which is just trivial. But the Americans are going to test drive the war with the Australians. And it'll be like, Solomon Islands or some shithole in the middle of fucking nowhere, really. I mean, it's all just fucking islands and water out there, you know what I mean? But they're going to do something like that. And since the cultural ties are a lot closer with the Australians than with the Ukrainians, it's going to be a bigger deal. And there's going to be more pressure from the mass media, which is bullshit, of course, because the mass media is just parroting whatever the government wants. There's going to be pressure from the mass media for the U.S. government to do something for the Australia bros. And that's how it's going to happen. It's going to be something along those lines. I mean, I don't know the details. I don't have a crystal ball or any shit like that. But that's basically how they're going to do it because they want to go to war. They think that they need to go to war with someone. And if you think that you have to get into a fight with somebody, who do you pick? The stronger, tough guy, the Russian guy, or the weakling little Chinese guy? Huh? Oh, who do you pick? Huh? You're a high school bully, yeah? And there's Ivan, and he's 6'4", 300 pounds, and he looks like a troglodyte, and he drags his knuckles, but do you want to get in a fight with him? Not really. And over there is little Yuan, and he's He's 5'3", and if he's lucky, he's tipping the scale at 100 pounds. You want to get in a fight with him? Yeah. Because I'm America. I'm number one. So the American bully, is going to pick a fight with the Chinese. It's as simple as that, man. Life is simple. Life is not complicated. You'd be surprised. As you get older, you'll realize how all human interactions, even interactions between great nations, are essentially an outgrowth of high school. I know it's shocking, but you'd be surprised. And it's something that I am constantly amazed at as I get older, that everything can be reduced to high school bullshit. Yeah, we don't change, man. We just get older and richer, and we have bigger guns. Yeah. And so that's what's going to happen.